Hey, here is a Fluffal deck profile. I've been playing this deck in locals and it does very good against a lot of the matchups right now. It's able to run droplets and poly and makes very good use of them because of the discard mechanic. There are a lot of cards in the Fluffal deck that you want to send to the graveyard off of super poly or off of droplets, and they plus you cards. So you're using these very crazy cards, but also plussing off of them. So that's how you get really great advantage in your deck. The only card that really stops this deck is Droll. This can get Lancia, but if you get Lancia, just don't use Fight for Fusion. It doesn't really matter. You don't really have to banish from your graveyard in order to fuse. The banishing does stop Fluffal Wings, but sometimes you don't even need Fluffal Wings and your hands is good enough on its own. Starting off with the main deck. Free Fluffal Penguin. When Fluffal Penguin is on the field, you can special summon a card from your hand, a Fluffal card from your hand. This is a stop once per turn, so if you resummon it to the field off a Reborn effect or off a Cross Shape effect, you can use it again. When this card is fusion summoned and sent to the graveyard, you can draw 2, discard 1. And again, discarding in this deck is really nice. Next, you have Fluffal Dog. Fluffal Dog is your normal summon or your special summon. When it's normal or special, it just searches a Fluffal card from your deck to your hand or an Edge Imp Scythe. Dolphin. When Dolphin is on the field, you can target a toy vendor in your graveyard, set it to your field, and then mill a card to your deck. This is really good because what you're going to normally be milling is Fluffal Wings. So you'll have your toy vendor on the field and you'll mill this Fluffal Wings. Now, Fluffal Wings, this is the best card in the deck by far. You only run 2 of them because it's searchable. It's very bricky if you have 2 in your hand. But if you have 1 in your hand, it's fine. You just can discard it through Fusion, through Toy Vendor, through Super Poly to get it in your graveyard in order to use this grave effect. When it's in the graveyard, you can banish this card as cost, then target a Toy Vendor, target a Fluffal in your graveyard, banish that Fluffal, draw a card. Then if you do that, you destroy a Toy Vendor and draw another card. When Toy Vendor is sent to the graveyard, it searches a Fluffal monster from your deck or an Edge Imp Sabers. So you basically get to draw 2, search 1. What's nice about this is you get to draw 2 before you search. So you get to see what you are drawing before you try to fix your hands. Fluffal Bear is a nice combo piece. It is it goes to the hand to the graveyard and it sets a toy vendor from your deck to the field, which is really nice. It goes over a lot of hand traps. It's really hard to stop a deck to field effect for a spell. Then if Wings is in your hand, you can get Fluffal Bear, send Fluffal Bear to the graveyard. It sets your toy vendor. Toy vendor discards a card from your hand to draw a card, so you discard the Wings, and then you have a toy vendor on the field, a Wings and a Bear in the graveyard. So then you can do your combo. Fluffal Sheep, I like searching this off Dog a lot of the time. When you play this, when you have a Fluffal on the field, it special summons for free. So it's really good with Cross Sheep because it can be that free special summon while you're pointing to a Fright for monster or fusion. That way you can resummon from the grave. When it says on the field, you can bounce a Fluffal back to your hand. The card you want to be bouncing are, you want to bounce Penguin back to your hand so you can fusion with it on your opponent's turn to get its draw 2, discard 1. That is a hard once per turn. So you use it on your turn and you can get back to your hand to use it on your opponent's turn. Or if you just want to go for the Wings, for the Dolphin reset, you can go for the Dolphin reset. When it bounces a card, it's special summon. It's an Edge Imp from your graveyard or your hand to the field. Fluffal Owl, this is only used to, what it does is when it's normal summon or special, it searches Poly, or you can use either one of these effects, only one, or you can fusion without Poly once per turn. This is good because that second effect does dodge Ash. Its first effect, if you know that you don't have an Ash, you can draw the Poly to mill your deck even more, so it's pretty versatile. Sometimes you don't have a Poly, there's no way to search a Poly, but you do have a way to search a Fluffal. So the one of Fluffal Owl in the deck for that line of if you need a Poly, you can search the Owl. 3 Edge Imp Chains. Edge Imp Chains, its first effect never comes up too often, but if you're locked out, it's okay. When it attacks, you add another Edge Imp Chains from your deck to your hand. But its major effect is when it is sent to the graveyard, so you can send it from Toy Vendor, you can send it from Fusion if it's on the field and dies. If it's on the field and you link off with it, what it does is it adds a Frightfur card from your deck to your hand. And there are some really nice Frightfur cards like Frightfur Patchwork and Frightfur Fusion where it's nice to search. Edgem Scythe. Edgem Scythe is really crazy. It's an in-archetype hand trap for the deck. What it does is you can fusion on your opponent's turn with a card from your hand or on your field, and you can special summon a card from your extra deck. So what I love to do is I love to have a Fluffal Penguin in my hand and an Edgem Scythe. Fusion Edgem Scythe and Fluffal Penguin in order to draw 2, discard 1. But what also this does is it chain blocks off your effect. So you summon Cruel Whale, and Cruel Whale is a non-targeting, pop 1 card on your field, pop 1 card on your opponent's field. So you can chain block it off, and you can have draw 2, discard 1 if they don't stop that. You pop itself, and you pop a card. Edgem Slice's other effect in the graveyard is it banishes itself to save a Frightfur from being discarded, from being destroyed. What is also really nice is I run a Dagda in this deck. So going first, you set up a Dagda, you search for the Edgem Scythe, and you grab a Fluffal Penguin. And then you fusion, you pop the Dagda, you draw 2, discard 1, you get a fusion, you lock them out, and the next turn you just one-shot them. Edgem Sabers. It's just the only searchable Edgem card off Fluffal searches, which is just nice. So you have the one-off, but its effect is when it's in the graveyard, you can special summon it to your side of field by putting 1 card from your hand to the top of the deck. This is actually really important because we'll talk about it when we get to Toy Vendor, but knowing the card on the top of your deck is kind of crucial for some combos / extensions in the deck, but this is just always nice as a free summon. Then we have the Edgem Scythe, which I just talked about. This card is, I love this card. When you pop it, it goes to the graveyard and it special summons. If it's special summoned on your opponent's turn, it locks him out of the extra deck for the whole turn. So what you want to do is basically have your Edgem Scythe in your hand and have like any Fluffal. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be Fluffal Penguin. Even though Fluffal Penguin is by far the best one to fusion with on your opponent's turn to get that plus, then special lock him out. I run 3 Foolish Burial Goods because it mills a spell from the deck to the graveyard. And when we're thinking of spells, we gotta take a look at these Toy Vendors. So what Toy Vendor does is when Toy Vendor, this is not a once per turn effect. None of its effects are once per turn, so it's actually really crazy for looping. When it's sent to the graveyard, you can send it so many ways. You can send it with Burial. It searches a Fluffal card or an Edgem Sabers from your deck and puts it into your hand. Now what else it does is you can discard a card as cost from your hand. So you discard a card as cost, you draw a card. If it's a Fluffal, you can special summon any card from your hand. It doesn't have to be the Fluffal you drew. Now that's really nice when you think about Edgem Sabers effect, which you know for a fact that card's a Fluffal. When you Toy Vendor, you can just toss a Toy Vendor, draw a card. It doesn't even have to be a Fluffal, for instance. It could be an Edgem Chains. It sends it to the graveyard. Edgem Chains will trigger, Toy Vendor will trigger. So it's just a bunch of discarding. So it's really nice. When you have Toy Vendor on the field, what's really good with this deck is droplets. I don't have 3 droplets, so in locals, I just play the 1. I play with the 2 at home with my friends. You play the droplets, and you can remove the Toy Vendor from your field to the graveyard. You can put a Chains from your hand to the graveyard, untargeted. They can't activate with spells or monster, silence 2. But then the toy and the chains both search you cards, and that's where it gets a little disgusting with being able to go second and one-shot your opponent while making great use of the droplets. And droplets actually fixing your hand and not taking out cards. Then you have 3 normal polys because we're a fusion deck. 2 super polys. Super poly discards a card, so again with the droplets you can discard a Toy Vendor or discard something else and super poly your opponent's board. Big swing on the board plus a search in your hand. Frightfur Patchwork. It searches for an Edgem card and a fusion. With this card, nice combos are searching a poly and the Edgem Chain so that you can fusion them away and then grab a different Frightfur card. Or if you're setting up for your following turn, you grab a poly and you grab the Scythe to keep the Scythe in your hand. Lastly, I run 2 Frightfur Fusions. A lot of people run 1. I love 2 because I have a Predaplant in my extra deck, and there's a lot of times where having the 2 Frightfur Fusions just with the Predaplant wins you the game. 1 Frightfur Repair. When this card first came out, we were always dumping it to the grave off of Kraken, off of Whale, and using its graveyard effect. It banishes from the grave to special summon a card from your hand. But its other effect is really good too, so sometimes I actually want to search this off of Edgem Chains. And what it does is it targets a Frightful card in your graveyard, puts it back to your extra deck, and special summons a Frightful card, Edgem card or a Fluffle card from your graveyard. So sometimes you just want to search that out. For the extra deck, I run one Sabertooth. Sabertooth, he's one Frightful card, and you can do one or more Fluffle or Edgem cards. What he does is when he's special summoned, he special summons a card from your graveyard that is a Frightful. So it's nice, like if you're in the game, you have a Kraken in the grave, you can get the Kraken back. It's kind of like you can change out any Frightful monster for a different Frightful monster in your graveyard. It also gives all the Frightful monsters 400 attack buff, and if you use 3 materials for it, it can't be killed by battle or by card effect. Frightful Tiger is really nuts. When it's fusion summoned, it pops cards on the field equal to the number of materials it had, but you can chain block this effect off if you're fusioning with Penguin. If you fusion, this specifically needs Edgem Sabers and Penguin, you can chain block this effect off and your opponent really can't stop you from destroying their board. But this does target too. It's a target effect, so they can dodge it other ways. I run the one Frightful Wolf because sometimes you have a lot of material in your graveyard and it's a late game stance, and sometimes you Verde Anaconda, Frightful Fusion, and Wolf, it attacks 5 times and you just insta-win off the Wolf. Anaconda is also for Fusion Poly. It can make someone a dark, it can fusion them together, or it can just be the Super Poly Catalyst. One Kraken. Kraken can attack 2 times. What it does is it targets a card on the field and sends it to the graveyard, but then if it does that, it can't attack face. But what's really nice about that is you can use Kraken's effect to target send, then fusion it away to get Sabertooth, and then resummon it with Sabertooth. Now, since it went to graveyard and came back, and attack twice again, or you can just use its effect to push a card back to the graveyard. 2 Cruel Whale. This is the new card that came out last year. When it is fusion summoned, it is a non-targeting pop 1 card on your field, pop 1 card on your opponent's field. This is crazy because sometimes you can just pop a Toy Vendor on your opponent's turn. You can pop an pop an Artifact Scythe. Because it doesn't target, it's so crazy. If you chain block this off with Penguin, your opponent cannot switch up their board field, their board state, because chainlink 1 Whale, chainlink 2 Penguin. They have to let the Whale go through, and then Whale non-targeting kills 2 things. So they don't know what you're going for. So even if they're trying to fusion off their stuff or get their things out of the way, you can wait for them to mess up, and then you just pop their stuff. Its other effect is Quick Effect. Target any fusion monster. That fusion monster gains half of its own attack. So if I targeted Kraken, it would get 13. Target a Whale, it would get 13. If I targeted Kraken, it would get 11. So it gains its own attack. If in order to do this, you have to mill a Frightful card from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard. This is nuts because you can mill the Repair for an extra special, or you can mill a Frightful card, and then you can Frightful Fusion that Frightful card and some cards in your graveyard for the Sabertooth to resummon something. My Super Poly targets, I do main deck this because I just fight a lot of Invoked Dogmatica and a lot of Shaddoll stuff. So I like main decking this. I have Starting Venom in my side, but this is just a really good main right now because if they have 2 darks anyway, most of the time you can Mud Dragon them because they'll be of different types, or you summon Verde Anaconda and then do it that way, or you normal summon your own dark. That's a Dark Fiend, which is your Edgem Chains, and you Super Poly your Edgem Chains with their dragon. They're like Boral or whatever, to get Mud Dragon, and then since Chains is going to the graveyard, it will search you a Frightful card. Totally awesome because we have water monsters in the deck, and it is really easy to go Penguin into, you get your Cross Sheep Penguin, and you get your Dolphin, and the Dolphin and Penguin go into Totally Awesome. Dagda, because this deck is crazy with Dagda. Normally what I like to do is I go for a Cross Sheep combo, get some stuff back, go for the Dagda, and then I go Dagda, sets the Edgem Scythe, and then I search for the, sets the Artifact Scythe, and then I search the Edgem Scythe, and I have the Penguin in the hand, and then I link these 2 off for an Appaloosa, and I sit on an Appaloosa with a Toad, maybe with a Frightful card in defense or something like that, but then in my hand I have Edgem Scythe and like a Fluffle. So then I fusion summon for another whale on my opponent's turn. I pop that, and I have the 2 negate Appaloosa for protection and the Totally Awesome for the spell and trap protection as well. Yeah, and then they're locked out, and then they basically have to pass it back to you. But then you have Cruel Whale on your field, and this is so much damage. Then you could go to Verde Anaconda and Fright for Fusion for your Kraken or your Wolf or your Tiger if you want to get rid of spell and trap cards on the field before you go with your combo. But again, if you just have the cards in your hand, because when you use your fusion with your Penguin, you draw 2, discard 1. So you draw 2, discard a Toy Vendor, discard some other card that wants to go to the graveyard, and you keep going plus off of that. So you're searching on your opponent's turn. So even though these cards are once per turn effects, you can do it on your turn and your opponent's turn. That way you can get max value out of it. Okay, so that is the Fluffle deck profile. This deck literally only gets stopped by Ash. All other hand traps do not matter to this deck. Nib even doesn't matter, because before I even do anything, I'll try to go to a Totally Awesome. If they tried to nib my Bahamut Shark, then they nibbed, and then I set up my board anyway, and it doesn't really matter at all what they do. Okay, so that is the Fright for Fluffle's deck profile. I hope you enjoyed.